Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to Unit 2, Day 3. We're about to get started by comparing plant and animal cells. So let's go ahead and begin. All right, so as you guys can see, we're looking at Unit 2, Cells, Day 3, and we're starting with what is the composition of plants and animal cells. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is composition? Composition means the makeup. And in this case, when we're talking about cells, we are talking about the organelles within plant and animal cells. So the do now asks, what are cells? You may write or draw your answer in the space provided below. So we are talking about the basic unit of life, folks. So cells are the most basic unit of life. All living things are made up of cells, and cells are the smallest living things, meaning that the organelles within the cell that we're about to examine visually are not actually alive themselves. But let's go ahead and look at a comparison between a plant cell and an animal cell. So the first thing that I'm hoping that you guys notice is the different shapes here. So on the left-hand side here, we're looking at the plant cell, and the plant cell, you can see, has a more square or rectangular shape, and plant cell, as I'm sort of coloring it in, this is very important, and we're about to talk about why it has this shape. But right off the bat, usually when you see a plant cell, it is depicted with a green outer wall that has angles, as opposed to the plant cell, as opposed to the animal cell, which you can see here has a more rounded shape. And we're going to use the color pink to code our animal cell. And animal cells are the kinds of cells that are inside our bodies. So let's go ahead and we're going to be labeling all the structures within these cells. So you want to be able to associate how the organelles look with their name and their function, okay? So first we're going to look at A. So A is in both plant and animal cells. And I sort of colored over it, but you can see this arrow is pointing onto sort of this inside layer here. And you can see there is a line on the inside that this is referencing and also a line on the outside. And you can see A is pointing to both the plant and animal cell, but B, that's pointing to that outside line, is only pointing to the plant cell. So that structure, A, that is very important and critical to transport within cells, is the cell membrane. So A is the cell membrane. So that's on the outside, the exterior layer of the animal cell, and the cell membrane is just inside another important structural external organelle on the plant cell. So let's go ahead and look at letter B, and we can see letter B, and I'm going to color this green because this is only in the plant cell, is the cell wall. And that word wall denotes structure, and the cell wall, just like I said, the cell membrane is very important for transport of materials both in and out of the cell. The cell wall is important for structure. So in our bodies, Inside human bodies, we have bones that provide our bodies with structure, right? So the reason why I'm able to stand upright and other animals are able to walk around and move and stand upright is because we have bones inside of our bodies that give us structure. Well, plants don't have bones, but they do have these rigid, meaning hard structures called cell walls that give plants structure, right? So a plant stem is able to stand up straight and hold the plant so it can face the sun and gather light energy that it needs to produce glucose via photosynthesis. And it's able to do that because of this cell wall that gives structure to each individual plant cell. And because of the cell wall, plant cells have this rectangular shape. And again, that organelle, the cell wall, is only in plant cells. So if you see a rectangular shaped cell, like when we were looking under the microscope at the onion cell and they looked rectangular, that is a plant cell. All right, so let's look at letter C. And letter C is showing us something in both the plant and animal cell. And you can see that within the cells, there's sort of this like dotted, almost like the background, right? And what this is a jelly-like substance. And within this jelly-like substance, all of the other organelles are suspended. Sort of like if you were going to have Jell-O on a holiday and you wanted to get really fancy, so you wanted to put some fruit in your Jell-O. So as you're setting up your Jell-O for the holiday, you mix in fruit and then you set it in the fridge to cool. And then overnight, the fruit winds up floating in the Jell-O, suspended as if it was like hanging by wires. So this jelly-like substance allows materials to flow through the cell. So not inside and outside of the cell, but through the cell. And it also cushions and protects the organelles and provides some structure. And we're shading this light blue, and you can see I'm showing you where this organelle is, and it's around all of the other organelles. And we call this organelle, this jelly-like substance, the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm, jelly-like substance. Ooh, forgive that handwriting, jelly-like substance within which all of the other organelles are suspended. And now we're looking at letter D, and letter D is showing us an area that is larger in the plant cell, but is present in both plant and animal cells. And that area is called the vacuole. So you can see here in plants, it is a large space, and in plants, we call that the central vacuole. But in animal cells, they still have these little spaces that are called vacuoles. They are just smaller. So what the vacuole does, the vacuole holds the vacuole is a storage space for water and other wastes that may be produced by the cell. And the central vacuole is larger in plant cells because this area holding water helps provide rigidity and helps the plant cell stand straight up. There is a term we use, so holds water. There's a term we use to describe a plant that is healthy and standing straight up. That word is turgid. And the way you get a nice turgid plant cell is by making sure that your plant cell or the plant itself is watered. When we examine plant cells in the lab under a microscope, the way that we make sure the cells are turgid, so they're nice and plump so we can observe all the organelles, is by dripping a bit of water onto our slide so that we may view the moistened cell under the microscope. So letter D is the vacuole, and remember, you can see there it's larger in the plant cell than it is in the animal cell. So now we're looking at letter E, and we're seeing in letter E it's a structure that's relatively the same size in both the plant and animal cells, and this is a very important structure, very critical to the overall organism itself. Each individual cell contains this organelle that has all of the genetic information for the cell, all of the instructions for life. This organelle functions as the brain of the cell. And when we talk about this organelle, we are talking about the nucleus. Our nucleus. And the nucleus holds genetic information, and it controls all of the actions of the cell. So the nucleus is very important. It's in plant and animal cells, and it contains the DNA of the cell. So each cell has identical DNA, but then depending upon what functions the cell actually needs to perform, it may carry out different specific functions. But all of the cells in our bodies have identical DNA, which is pretty cool. So each individual cell in your body contains all of the instructions needed to carry out the life functions of all of your different cells. Whoa, cells are cool. All right, let's look at letter F. So the structure in letter F, we're going to color a darker green color because this is another plant-only structure, and we like to use green to signify our plant cells. And ooh, that is a little bit of a dark green shade, but that organelle, very important to the life of the plant, is the chloroplast. So the chloroplast makes glucose via photosynthesis. And we're going to talk a lot more about photosynthesis in Unit 3, but if you ever see a green cell, it is the pigment chlorophyll that makes that cell be green, and if you ever see a cell that is green, you know that is a plant cell. But the chloroplast is very critical, and it performs a cyclical function with the next organelle that we're about to talk about to help plants maintain their lives. And plants are called autotrophs. Which means they produce their own energy, and they produce their own energy with the help of this organelle, the chloroplast. And last but absolutely very much not least, in fact, last but most, we have here the powerhouse of the cell. We are highlighting her. She is special. We love her. You're doing great, sweetie. We are talking about the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is usually colored yellow or orange. And that's because it should make you think of energy or power, because the mitochondria produces the energy for the cell, and it's a bean-shaped structure that has little lines in it that kind of look like a lightning bolt. right? And that lightning bolt can help you remember that it produces the power, or it is like the resource center for the cell. And the way it produces that power is via cellular respiration, which we're going to talk a lot more about in Unit 3. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we just talked about the composition of plant and animal cells, and together we went through and labeled all of the different organelles in plant and animal cells and looked at their visual representations on this diagram. So go ahead and complete the exit ticket for day 3, which is linked on your Google Classroom stream. If this was not a sufficient explanation for you, I encourage you guys to look back at your day 1 notes where there was a nice color version of the plant and animal cell comparison for you guys to look at. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video and it was helpful. Please make sure you hit like and subscribe and leave any comments below with your questions. Don't forget to submit your exit ticket and have a super fantastic day. Goodbye, guys.